Hey, this is Sanyam Bhutani, and you're listening to Chai Time Data Science, a podcast for data science enthusiasts where I interview practitioners, researchers, and Kagglers about their journey, experience, and talk all things about data science. Hello and welcome to Quarantine Content with my Kaggle heroes, the CTDS.Show. In this episode, I interview a Kaggle Grandmaster from Turkey, Ahmet Erdem. Ahmet is at the Rapids AI team where he's a senior software engineer. And instead of, as you would have expected, talking about Rapids, I would point you to checking out episode 31 for that. My interview, the Even Aldridge, where we have gone into depth about what is Rapids. So instead of talking about Rapids, we talk all about Ahmet's Kaggle journey and his 7th place solo gold solution to the Trends Neuroimaging competition. Ahmet has been competing for over a few years now, and we discuss his approach to Kaggle, which has led him to achieving 50% medals solo versus 50% in a team, which is, I believe, a rare occurrence. And this is across all medals, gold, silver, otherwise. So without further ado, here's one of the most fun interviews with the Kaggle Grandmaster. Please enjoy the show. I'm honored to be talking to Ahmet Erdem on the show. Ahmet, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
So, like always, I usually start by talking about the guest journey. For my Kaggle heroes, it's about Kaggle. What would be your first memory of Kaggle? How did you get started on Kaggle?
So I was doing my master's in artificial intelligence, and there was a machine learning course, and that course had in-class competition. So that was the first time I created a Kaggle account, but I was a very big noob at that time. So even in-class competition, we couldn't achieve anything. But my first serious Kaggle competition was query question pairs. I was doing NLP at work, but I was feeling like I'm not really knowledgeable at NLP, so I wanted to learn some NLP. And I started in that competition to learn more. But I didn't expect it, but I was almost getting a gold in that one. But I learned a lot, and I enjoyed. Maybe it was the most fun competition for me because the learning curve was at that time was very high. Then later it gets lower and lower.
So you've competed across both NLP and computer vision. Which ones do you enjoy more? Do you have any favorite battle stories?
Like computer vision, I rarely do. I'm not very good at computer vision, and I didn't have also enough hardware for it. Now, thanks to NVIDIA, I have some hardware, so finally I can do some more computer vision. But therefore, I can prefer NLP. But NLP is now also time costly. Like 3 years ago, it was not like that. I could train an LSTM model on my laptop, but now it's also heavy. But my favorite competition, I like science competitions mostly because they are very unstructured and kind of tabular. And my favorite was plastic, so it was about classifying some space objects, if they are stars or what kind of stars they are. And in that one, I worked with very high discipline. Like I follow Scrum methodology by myself. So I made a backlog and I logged everything, every experiment I tried. I tried this didn't work, this worked. I used Git and everything. So I worked on it very professional, and it was my first solo gold. So I guess it was the biggest Kaggle story for me.
Do you still follow that approach? Do you still create Trello boards and or is it just spreadsheets now?
Like it was, I think in that competition I devoted myself a lot, so therefore I could properly follow. Nowadays I start with such approaches, then in the middle I notice that I'm not following any.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you usually pick up a script from your earlier competition, start from that, or how do you approach a new competition today?
So like maybe more than half of my code is also public. So after competitions, if my code is clean, also open source it so that others can also use it. And I copy paste a lot from that repos that I open sourced or kernels. Of course, it helps, but yeah, every competition has different metrics and so on nowadays. So
Yeah. And I was going through your profile, and I always like to bring up the numbers for Kaggle Grandmasters. For you, it's 50% solo medals versus 50% in a team for both gold, silver, bronze. It applies to all of these things almost roughly. How do these two compare for you, working in a team versus working alone? Even in your recent competition, many grandmasters, after they become a grandmaster, they tend to work in a team since they don't have that requirement of the solo gold. You still achieved the solo gold recently, so how do you compare the two?
yeah, so it has it's both advantages and disadvantages. Like main disadvantage with team, like I cannot give up. When I start, if I team up, then I cannot give up on that competition because sometimes I am really bored at a competition. Like I start hating the competition, then I want to leave. But if I'm in a team, then yeah, I work on it till the end. That's the main disadvantage. And with solo, of course, the main disadvantage there's no one to discuss. Once I am stuck, then also motivation-wise, like when you have a teammate, you talk with each other, you motivate each other. With solo, it is a bit difficult. And I also like after being grandmaster, I wanted to continue doing solos as well because like sometimes if you see someone is always doing team like 100% team, then yeah, you may think like is he a free rider or something like because some people and like these kind of things happen. So I wanted to see if I am still performing well by myself also.
And you have been consistently on Kaggle. Another thing you mentioned is once you get stuck on the leaderboard or once you start hating the competition, which is when maybe your score isn't improving. How do you find ideas then once, let's say you hit a temporary block and you're not trying to improve your score? How do you go searching for ideas?
I guess there is one advantage of being on Kaggle for a long time. You start knowing people, like what are their styles. Like when you see someone on top of leaderboard, and if you know that person, oh, this is a deep learning person. Okay, then I should focus on neural nets. Oh, this is like feature engineering person. Okay, then there must be some feature engineering. Like if you read a lot of winning solutions from previous competitions, this helps. Like this is kind of social engineering or something like that. When I'm stuck, I'm starting looking at a leaderboard.
Interesting. So coming to your recent gold medal, Trends Neuroimaging, that's the name of the competition. Congratulations on another solo gold. Can you help
Thank
us
you.
set the stage and tell us what was the competition about?
So it was about, the data was 3D brain MRIs. So and the goal was to predict age and some variables for patients. So variables were anonymized, so I don't know what they really are, but age was not anonymized. And we were given functional MRI, whole 3D brain scans for 53 different activities for all the patients. So it was a really big data. And also independent components of structural MRI. So it was also like I guess maybe more than half of the team didn't even touch the image data. They used only the provided tabular data, so it was kind of mixed tabular and image.
And did you find that aha moment, since I believe your MS was also on a similar topic, your master's research title was also, so did you look at the competition and say, okay, I'm gonna get a gold in this one?
So first of all, my master thesis was the worst thesis I have ever seen. Like I have a lot of mistakes in it. Like at that time, I guess I was like I blame myself, but I may also blame my supervisor. Like I had a lot of rookie mistakes in it. I basically overfit the cross validation. So if you have small data and if you do a lot of cross validation and do feature selection based on cross validation, you can easily overfit the cross validation also. But I was thinking, oh, I am doing cross validation, I can never overfit. So then when I saw this combination, then I thought, okay, it is for me. For me, it's a revenge moment or rebound moment.
Redemption
So
time.
I need to see if after 4 years, if I learned anything.
So how did you finally invest your time into this competition? How did you spend? I think you joined during the recent days. How did you spend those few weeks?
Yeah, so also one in the beginning of computing, I started in the very beginning, but at that time I wanted to showcase some applications also like Rapids. So I first focused on creating some good starter kernels for people. Uh, so I had a Rapids SVM kernel, so it was 10 times or more faster than sklearn SVM implementation.
Which
It
was one of
became
the most used kernels in this competition, I think. Still,
Yeah, I think it became like a baseline, so people started improving on top of it. So, like even at the end, I guess everyone had a Rapids SVM model in their blend or as their main model. So first, I focused on it, and also for feature selection, I have a personal repo called Low for Importance. So I was also trying to use it on this competition. So first period was about kernels. Then there is another Kaggle Grandmaster called Seutao. So he shared a repo about using 3D images with ResNet. Then I focused on it. I improved it a little bit. So I totally focused on image data, but I couldn't get much out of it. So tabular data was helping more. Like I tried a lot of different augmentations and everything didn't really work. Then I said, okay, I'm done with the image part. Let's do normal modeling part. Um, yeah.
so you mentioned kernels, and I think most of your kernels are baseline models, or they usually show some trick around features. What advices would you have for sharing such kernels? And I think you can also, if you could also share what you don't enjoy reading in some kernels that are along these lines,
Yeah.
or what
So
shouldn't one do?
sometimes kernels are really difficult to read. Like it is like when I read some kernels, I become blind. So it is really difficult. Like I understand sometimes people don't have time, therefore they rush everything. They do a lot of copy paste. But I like for my code also, if there is code duplication, it really irritates me. So I try to make everything functional and like minimize the code duplication. And sometimes on Kaggle, you see very long notebook. Like I cannot follow if it is more than 10 cells or something. Some people can follow. I guess it is maybe something personal, but I like shorter notebooks. Yeah, therefore I always try to share something short.
I've certainly been enjoying them. And if you could also share, so this was, I think this had a big data set in terms of size, which means it was somewhat hardware constraining. What hardware were you using? Was this the same rig you use for GTA testing in your free time?
Yeah, this one I actually used a laptop, but it was a very powerful laptop. So it had NVIDIA Quadro RTX 5000 GPU and 64 gigabyte RAM. So for a laptop, it was very powerful. But I ran most of my image experiments overnight. So I started before sleeping, and in the morning I got the results on that machine. And for the tabular part, everything was already running in 5-10 minutes. So
Is this the category of laptops that's almost like a portable desktop, the heavy ones? Is
yeah,
this?
it is a Dell laptop. It is very heavy. It is very big. Yeah, but yeah, it is. Otherwise, it is difficult to be so powerful.
Do you regret that buying decision? Because I am always mad at myself for buying a gaming laptop.
Yeah, you can consider that one. I mean, it is just heavy, but I also don't travel around a lot, so it stays at home.
Okay. So coming back to the competition, if you could share what finally worked in the competition and what made it to your final solution.
So in 3D CNN, I think I could improve it, and then I could get some image features. Maybe it was relatively better if I read other solutions, so I could get more juice out of this 3D CNN. And then the other trick is, so it was very high dimensional data, so regularization was very important. And for different models, you need different regularization. For SVM, in order to regularize it, you have the parameter C, but feature scales are also important. Therefore, you need to scale down all the um, high dimensional features. But when it comes to light GBM, scale is not important, right? So then what I do, I oversample the features which doesn't overfit these independent components, and I keep other correlation features, like thousands of correlation features, the same, but then I use very small feature fraction rate, which was like 1% or something. So every three was using only 1% of the features. So and for MLP, for my neural net, I use different dropout rates for different kind of features. So it was the key trick, I guess. And additionally, there was site 2. So all the train set was from site 1, and some of the test set was from site 2. So they wanted us to build a model that is robust against different sites. What I do in such cases, validation, then I see how much separation there is. Then I use the predictions as sample weights in my model, so that if some of my rows are similar to site 2, then they get more weights. This helped me in public leaderboards, but not in private leaderboards, because it was something tricky. Normally, Kaggle, if Kaggle aims for having robust model among different kind of types, they usually put less site 2, let's say, in public and more in private. Then I
Yeah.
actually expected to go up in the shakeup because I was considering it. But I guess the reverse happened. So they put less in private. Then my effort with that problem was wasted. Yeah, but it is a trick that I also applied in previous competitions, using sample weights from adversarial validation.
Okay. So you mentioned two things. Can you help us understand what is a 3D CNN? How does it differ? Is it more difficult to implement? And why does regularization help when you have a lot of features? For
So
for for Kaggle noobs like me who who don't know of these terms.
So 3D CNN, actually it is same as 2D CNN, just that instead of, yeah, 2D CNN goes squares by squares, right? And in this one you go cube by cube. Of course, it doesn't have to be cube. You can change the size, but the same logic, totally the same logic. Then and these images were not having any color, so only intensity, but we had 53 of such images for each different activity. Then this 53 I used it as color space. So as if I have 53-dimensional color. And I couldn't use any pre-trained model on that. Normally in image you can use pre-trained because of this nature. You have 53 color channels, let's say, and therefore I trained from scratch. And when it comes to regularization, I use this 3D CNN's predictions as autofold. So it was I ran it with cross validation. Then I get the autofold predictions, and then I feed them to my original models. And they were just 5 targets, so I don't need to regularize them much. But there was also correlation features provided by the host, and these correlation features were like thousands of features, I guess. And that one you really need to regularize so that your model can easily overfit, because we only had 10,000 patients or so. Like in train set, it was 5,000 patients. So it is very easy to overfit with 5,000 patients, thousands of features, and therefore you need regularization in this problem.
Understood. So Kaggle requires a lot of fast iteration power, and I'm using this as a segue to talk about your day job, which is at Rapids. Can you tell us more about your role at Rapids and what is Rapids doing?
So NVIDIA built a Kaggle Grandmaster team. We are 9 people right now, and our main duty is to give feedback on Rapids, to test it, give feedback, and try it on Kaggle, and like make people meet with Rapids so that they can get faster data science pipelines. So most of us don't directly contribute in the Rapids code base. So we create issues if we see a bug, if we see an improvement or a feature request. But yeah, mostly it is about testing, experimenting, giving feedback, and promoting it.
Can you confirm or deny any upcoming interesting graphic cards by NVIDIA that can be helpful for Kaggle?
Yeah, I also don't know about that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll also do a self promotion. I've interviewed Evan Aldridge from the team. That was episode 31, I think, where we have discussed the complete Rapid suite for the audience. So if you'd like to check that out, but I'd like to also ask you what would be the business model for Rapids according to you, since it's an open source project. Is this just a way for NVIDIA to share the power of graphic cards, or is there a business model as well?
Yeah, this part I also don't know officially. I mean, I don't, as a person, I'm not very interested in business models, but I would think it is, at the end, it should be related to selling more GPUs, right? So, and it's an open source, so it's not a commercial product. They don't expect people to pay for that software. But if people can get hundreds times faster results with Rapids compared to equivalents like Pandas or Sklearn, then it will eventually become a must in data science. Then all the data science teams will start using Rapids. And then in that case, they will need GPUs. Then they will sell more GPUs. I guess that's the model probably.
Okay. So you mentioned you get to Kaggle a lot. What does a day in your life on non-pandemic days look like? Do you drink chai and compete on Kaggle for a large part of your day?
So the one thing, my days prior to pandemic and my days now are equal. So I was already living lockdown life. Maybe I'm even going out more nowadays because I am cycling nowadays, like to not stay at home all the time. But yeah, it is very similar to my previous life. So now people are experimenting my life, so they're trying it.
Now that people are complaining, that made you realize maybe you should step out and work out a little.
Yeah, maybe. like I didn't like, of course, the pandemic, but I liked a bit the pandemic life because now everyone is having the same life as me.
Okay.
Mostly, yeah, I'm mostly on Kaggle, since it is my job and also my hobby. So it, it is actually some dream job, right? Your hobby and your job are the same. From that aspect, I'm really happy. But after some time, it also gets tiring because Kaggle is very energy consuming. And if your hobby is Kaggle, your work is Kaggle, then it's also a bit difficult. Therefore, in order to refresh, I just go cycling around and playing some stupid games like GTA without any effort. And yeah, that clears my mind. And also watching some Netflix, but I am very selective in series. Like,
Okay. I'll just talk about video games in a second, but this is also a repeat question on the show. I like to ask all of the grandmasters that every time I get a different answer. What would be your best advice to someone who's just starting on Kaggle today?
do not start. They shouldn't start. My advice is because first it is addictive. Second, if they start, they will outperform me. So then my main advice is to not start.
Okay.
But yeah. Jokes aside, they should first focus on learning. They shouldn't care about medals and something at first. I mean, that was the time I enjoyed most. Like when I don't care about the medals and points, I enjoyed most. I learned most, and also they shouldn't think like it is a big deal. So sometimes I see people, they think grandmasters are aliens, like they are crazy good. Like sometimes they
Which they
overrate
are.
the Kaggle experience. I mean, they can actually. Some new started after several competitions. Like the gap is not that big, so they shouldn't be afraid. There is after some competitions, the gap is very small. They can also compete for top positions.
Okay. So with that advice brings me to the final question, and this is the tricky question. This has been a tricky question for some grandmasters. What would be your single favorite game of all time? The only game, if you were to pick one that you can play for the rest of your life.
Computer game.
Sure.
Yeah, Dota, I guess. I mean, it also I wasted a lot of times in Dota. If I look how many hours I played, and it is a lot of waste actually. But I also enjoyed it a lot during high school years. We were sometimes even not going to classes and together going to internet cafes to play Dota together. It was best times because I like playing on LAN compared to online.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, it is your friends are physically next to you, like you can
So you can
make
see the reaction in real time.
you can touch them. So it is better when you play online, like there is someone and like that you don't see, like it is not that fun.
Totally. Do you have you played competitively? Do you compete on Dota as well, or is that just a casual game for you?
Yeah, I when I was younger, I was more competitive in Dota. Like since we play LAN, it was more of a local competition for us. And at that time, there was no Dota 2, so we were mostly using Dota map of Warcraft. And when Dota 2 started, I also I was in university, so I couldn't invest too much time. I tried to be competitive, but then it was a lot of stress. Like you really need to spend time, and it is like in Dota, it is if you get a bad team, then it is like torture. You need to be lucky, and it was giving me some anger, so I made it. I played less and less over time.
They're also bad with the cooldown bad times, right? Like if you abandon a match midway, there are some cooldowns that happen. Very strict rules, if I remember correctly.
What's it exactly? Cool down.
Dota, the online game has some very strict rules. If you abandon a game, you're banned for playing for a few hours.
Yeah, you lose points. You are in low priority queue. Yeah, abandoning game it is really annoying. I mean, I was not abandoning any game. And when people do it, it's really annoying because you play a game and whole fun is ruined. Yeah.
Okay, that was an amazing story. Before we end the call, what would be the best platforms to connect with you? I'll have these linked in the description of the podcast.
Best time to
Best platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn. Where should the audience find you?
I guess Kaggle and Twitter. Yeah, and LinkedIn maybe, but on LinkedIn I'm not so active. I would prefer Twitter. Twitter is more fun, and Kaggle. Most of the machine learning related I share on Kaggle.
Okay. I'll have your profiles linked. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast and for sharing your story on the podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to give it a review or feel free to shoot me a message. You can find all of the social media links in the description. If you like the show, please subscribe and tune in each week to Chai Time Data Science.